بسم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، إخوة الإسلام عباد الله. The title, as you can see, is I agree with Khalid Green concerning SP leaks. And this is based off a recent video that Khalid, may Allah preserve him, that he uploaded to his YouTube channel entitled SP Leaks, Spubs, Cultism, My Rebuttal. And my opinion of that particular video is that I think that the brother Khalid did a good job in responding to this SP leaks. And you could sense in his response that he sincerely wanted good for the people that he was directing his advice / criticism towards. You didn't get the sense of any type of malice, intent, and thus forth and so on. On the contrary, the person who honestly listens to it, he walks away with the impression that Khalid was trying to achieve good in a praiseworthy manner and not a blameworthy manner. He wasn't insulting or name calling, but he was clarifying some issues. And for that reason, from what I saw, I totally agree with what he said in that video. Now, I'd like to just kind of add to some of the things that Khalid spoke about, and there were some things that he alluded to within that video that he didn't go too in depth in. And I want to kind of just expound on some of those things a little bit. And when doing that, I think it's important for me to quote the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala when he states, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina lillah shuhada'a bil qist. And I'm going to read directly from the Noble Quran. O you who believe, stand out firmly for Allah as just witnesses. As just witnesses. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآءُ قَوْمٍ عَلَى أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. And then Allah continues, and let not the enmity of others make you avoid justice. Be just, that is nearer to piety and fear of Allah. Verily, Allah is well acquainted with with what you do. Allah is well acquainted with that which you do. Now, Sheikh Abdul Rahman ibn Nasir al-Sa'adi, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, he comments on this particular verse. In his tafsir, he says, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ أي لا يحملنكم بغض. Do not carry hatred, hatred of a people. قوم على أن لا تعدلوا. Do not carry this hatred of a people or against the people cause you to not be just. كما يفعله من لا عدل له أو من لا عدل عنده ولا قسط. Just as those that have no justice, neither justness nor fairness and or equity would do. Just like as those that have no justice, fairness and or equity would do. Don't be like this. Al-adl, as the ulama have explained, and I've heard several of the mashaykh give this definition over and over again. Al-adl wad'u shay fi mawdi'ihi, that it is putting things in their proper place. If you have a criticism, then that criticism is put in its proper place. It is we don't criticize somebody with a criticism that is outside of what is correct and outside of what is proper. That would be dhulm. That would be dhulm, by attributing to them that which they are free of, by insinuating some of the most evil and negative things that come to mind without any type of proof to support that which one is saying. To support that which one is saying. And I believe this is what this SP Leaks seems to be going around doing their rounds on different people's videos and leaving these type of pathetic comments. I did a video, Salafi Inc. is not a crew, posse, clique, to the end of the different synonyms I use for that word. It's not a gang. And the intent of what I was mentioning was clear. The message that I was conveying was crystal clear. However, this person or persons, SP Leaks, left some comments that were negative, outlandish, far-fetched, and reality contradicting. They literally oppose the comments. And within the comments, it literally opposed clear things that I was saying within that speech. And it was coupled with unbefitting insults to me, referring to me as Najeeb, and things of this nature. So when I first saw those comments, and not the first initial comments, but the person tried to repeatedly leave comments, I literally walked away from that situation believing that's not a Muslim. I said there's no way that a Muslim that's right-minded, that's sound of intellect, would draw conclusions of that nature. That can't be a Muslim. In my mind, I was thinking, this is some type of agent provocateur working for some type of government agency to stir confusion amongst Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. That's what I literally walked away thinking. And this isn't far-fetched, because we've had in the 60s, we've had black nationalist groups that were just basically trying to fight for basic civil rights of black folks here in America, and literally the FBI infiltrated those groups. COINTELPRO was something that was real, it was factual. And so that was them fighting for basic civil rights for black people in America. The dawah to Salafiyya is much greater than that, and is a much greater threat to the U.S. form of capitalism that we find occurring in the society today. And the U.S. government knows exactly what the dawah to Salafiyya is and what it stands for. All you have to do is go to the Homeland Security's website, and you find them having write-ups on the varying different Islamic groups. So for me, it's not far-fetched that there may be some government agencies purposely working to cause mischief and strife and stir confusion amongst Ahl Sunnah, keep us divided, and thus forth and so on. And when I read this SP Leaks and what they wrote, I literally walked away having that understanding. This is Agent X. This isn't a Muslim writing this stuff. This is Agent X. And of course, comments like that are not going to be approved on my YouTube channel. But then after Khalid dropped this video, it became apparent that these are Muslims somewhere in Britain. And in fact, it was brought to my attention that there's two particular brothers involved in this. Some brother Suleiman Mendinki or whatever his name is, and some other guy Abu Ismail Abdul Hamid, if I'm not mistaken. These are actual people that are behind this. Muslims claiming to be Salafis, making outrageous comments of this nature that are devoid of justice and fairness, and these comments are fueled by their hatred for us pubs, as the brother Khalid eluded in his or clarified in his video. And so one of the things that what I was surprised when Khalid was discussing this issue is that there was an attempt to say that Khalid Green is like S-Pubs. Khalid Green. For anybody that has watched a video or two or even more than that, to say that Khalid Green is just like S-Pubs or like S-Pubs, then anybody would have to admit that this is from the biggest of slanders that's clear and obvious. Who walks away honestly thinking that Khalid Green is like S-Pubs? But unfortunately, this was the exact same claim that was being made against me when they were leaving their comments. I mean, these guys, although I clarified in that video what Salafi Inc. is, who the contributors of Salafi Inc. are, who owns Salafi Inc., and if one is criticizing Salafi Inc., you're really criticizing a particular brother, not a group of brothers, because Salafi Inc. is not a group or a gang. That was made clear and distinct, yet this person kept falling right back on that and declaring you guys are just like S-Pubs. So now it's becoming apparent to me that this is a talking point for people who have a hatred for S-Pubs, regardless if it's legitimate or illegitimate. And whenever they hear something that they don't like from another person involved in dawah, in order to dismiss that person's dawah efforts with whoever lends an ear to them, they just say, oh, they're just like S-Pubs. No matter how far-fetched that sounds. No matter how far-fetched that sounds. So much so, the hatred has become so apparent that in this day and time now, you actually have people fighting the da'wah to Salafiyya. You actually have people fighting the da'wah to Salafiyya in the name of exposing S-Pubs. And I'll give you an example, and I guess this type of, we have it here in the States as well. But I'll give you an example because now you have people openly attempting to discredit the book Sharh Sunnah. And this was something that Khalid alluded to but didn't go in depth. And he brought it up but didn't spend too much time on it. But people are literally trying to discredit the book Sharh Sunnah by stating that Al-Imam al-Barbahari didn't write it, that there was another author to it who was referred to as the Dajjal of Baghdad. Not recognizing that this isn't an attack on Salafi publications. This is a direct attempt to discredit a book that the scholars have affirmed to be a good book for one to take knowledge from, and so much so that even some of the scholars have done explanations to this work. And Sheikh Khalid al-Raddadi, in his sharh or commentary to this book, somewhere in the introductory chapters, he even deals with the whole issue of how the book was attributed to someone other than Al-Imam al-Barbahari. He deals with that issue and removes all doubt concerning who the book goes back to. The point that I'm making is because S-pubs teach this book on a regular basis, instead of the person just coming and saying, this guy, in my opinion, is not qualified to teach this book, they go beyond bounds and attempt to discredit the book itself. The book itself. This is from dhulm. This is from oppression. Likewise, we have springing up in an attempt to discredit, criticize, and malign Salafi publications. You have yet another attack on the dawah, on the aspect of the dawah itself. That being as it relates to how the Muslims living in the lands of the Muslims under the authority of a Muslim ruler, how they interact with that Muslim ruler if he is sinful and or oppressive. And so you have people now, in an attempt to discredit Salafi publications, and inadvertently they're actually attacking the dawah, they're using an exception, an exceptional circumstance. They're blowing up this exceptional circumstance and making it like it's the rule in order to, in an attempt to make these guys look like fools. And by doing that, the people that are listening to that, they're not applying that in the sense that it's an exception to a rule. It's a certain type of circumstance where this is being applied, because these people aren't echoing that loudly. It's almost as if it's like I said, they're taking an exception and making the exception the rule and doing away with the rule with the claim of refuting the ignorance of S-pubs. There is no matter in this religion that we take the exception to the rule and teach it to the people like it is the rule. You don't find the ulama doing that. We know that there are certain types of circumstances where pork would be permissible to eat, but this would be in an abnormal circumstance. It would be in an abnormal circumstance. So it would be an exception to the rule. But when we teach about the ruling on eating pork, we don't start with the exception to the rule. We may not even deal with the exception to the rule because it's in an abnormal circumstance where that would be applicable. It's not the rule. It's an exception to the rule. And so this is what we find happening because of people's hatred for S-pubs. Their hatred for S-pubs is causing them to go beyond bounds and actually attack aspects of the methodology that the Salaf were upon or the A'imma were upon. And these were just two examples that come to mind at the moment. Now, one of the things that our brother Khalid Green, may Allah reward him for the good that he does, that's in service to Allah's deen, and pardon him for whatever mistakes he may make, and thus forth and so on. One of the things that he pointed out, which I agree with him 100%, is this claim of Salafi publications being a cult. Now, this speech is not meant as a defense of Salafi publications, just like our brother Khalid was not defending them. It's clear that they have many mistakes, and we'll get to their mistakes in a second. But it's showing how people, because they have a hatred for them, their hatred is fueling them to be unjust. And we don't condone that type of behavior neither. I myself have publicly criticized Salafi publications, but especially their affiliates here in the U.S., but my criticisms against them are knowledge-based. There are points that are being brought. One of the biggest points that I frequently will bring up is that how they make issues and have enmity and hostility with other Salafis based off non-issues. And I've made that explicitly clear in two written refutations of Anwar Wright that are on my website now. One of them was very detailed. Another thing that they fall into is this form of sensationalism in their criticisms of individuals, magnifying something that is not to the magnitude or to the limit that they try and make it seem to be. And then three, the multitudes of double standards that they have with them. These are things that have been clarified over and over again. Over and over again. However, you find, and it was done with justice. However, you find people coming now slapping the label of cult on them. Now, the word cult can be synonymous with party. It can even be synonymous with religion, and thus forth and so on. But the word cult, yani, has a much, much more negative connotation to it, and it literally implies something that SPubs is actually free of. And for me to illustrate that, then let's just take a look at some well-known cults that sprung up in the United States. One of the things that they all had in common is that there was a sinful love without a doubt, for the charismatic leader or leaders, and and I'm looking for the proper words to put it to explain this, but there was a uncompromising love and following of these individuals in the absolute sense. In the absolute sense, unrelenting love and following of these individuals. So much so they'll do whatever for these leaders, the leaders of these cults. They will go against whatever religion that they had prior to meeting these cult leaders and what they thought was right and wrong from a religious perspective. They will go against what they believe was right and wrong from a cultural perspective, from an ethical perspective, from a moral perspective, all because the cult leader, all to please the cult leader. All of this was done to please the cult leader. And we have several examples of that have occurred from U.S. cults within the last 20 to 30 years. If I were to give some examples, Jim Jones and that cult, look at how they venerated this cult leader. They venerated this cult leader so much that 900 of their members drank Kool-Aid filled with cyanide and killed themselves. This is how fanatic they were to that leader. The Charles Manson family, they were so fanatic to that leader that they killed like 7 people in a 2-day span. They killed 2 people in a 2-day span. When we look at the cult of Heaven's Gate, where 30 something people, I think it was 39 people in 1997, uh, drank poison or put poison in their food and covered their heads with plastic bags and committed suicide on account of the orders of the leadership of the cult. These cults, this is how far gone they are. The absolute and unrelenting fanaticism is devoted to the leaders to the point where it's clearly deification. They look at these cult leaders as above perfection and above being contested or questioned. They literally, they literally make their cult leaders an equal, without a doubt, as it relates to tashri'ah or legislating. There isn't a cult that I mentioned that I know of, that I've ever heard of, except that they have what you call shirk al-ta'ah or polytheism as it relates to obedience. And for me to illustrate what shirk al-ta'ah is, and I'm pretty sure as I'm saying this and the people that are listening to this, what I'm saying is clearly understood. So I'm going to read the statement of Sheikh Ibrahim ibn Sheikh Salih ibn Ahmed al-Khuraysi in his book at Tanbihat al-Mukhtasira, where he deals with or explains what shirk al-ta'ah is. And this is as it relates to the statement of Allah when he says, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. They took their rabbis and their monks as lords besides Allah. And of course, Adi ibn Hatim in the hadith, he said, إِنَّا لَسْنَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ. Indeed, we did not worship them. And the Prophet ﷺ, he clearly stated to them, did they not make haram what Allah made halal, so you made it haram? And then he stated the opposite of that. And then Adi, he stated, Bala, he answered in an affirmative. And the Prophet ﷺ, he stated, Tilka ibadatuhum. That is worship of them. So I'm going to read from what the Shaykh, how he explains what that is. He states, شرك الطاعة فمن أطاع المخلوقين في تحليل ما حرم الله أو تحريم ما أحل الله ويعتقد ذلك بقلبه مع علمه بأنه مخالف للدين فقد اتخذهم أربابا من دون الله وأشرك به الشرك الأكبر. He states, shirk as it relates to obedience. It is if an individual obeys the creation in declaring to be lawful whatsoever Allah has made prohibited, and the prohibiting of whatsoever Allah has made lawful, and they believe that with their hearts, along with knowledge that it contradicts or opposes the deen. This is very important because when you look at the Yahud and the Nasara back then, this is what is implied. They had knowledge that what these people were doing contradicted their deen, yet they followed their monks and their rabbis accordingly. And this is why I said what I said about these cults. These people came from religions, most likely Christian religions, or culturally they understood from the culture of the people here what was correct and what was incorrect. And they have such a fanaticism to these cult leaders that they would literally go against what they have been taught all their life to be correct or incorrect. Correct or incorrect. All to please this cult leader and their fanatic love for this cult leader. I mean, it's innate within a person. It's from a person's innate nature not to kill himself. Yet they, would do this. As I mentioned from some of these cults, the Jim Jones and others, people literally killed themselves out of love and devotion for their cult leader. Now, this is why I said I agree with Khalid Green when he stated that he doesn't agree with them being labeled like this. Can we honestly say that the followers and supporters of S-Pubs are a bunch of mushrikeen, making Abu Khadija equal with Allah in Tashri'ah? Can we honestly say that? Like these cults do? This is why that term is so far-fetched and goes beyond bounds as it relates to these brothers. Now, if it is said, like the brother mentioned in his video, if it's said that these brothers have characteristics of Hizbiyah, then I agree with that, without a doubt. So this thing morphed from cult characteristics because there are cult characteristics that are synonymous with characteristics of Hizbiyah. So there was a particular student of knowledge that resides in Qatar, if I'm not mistaken, that some brothers who I have respect for know personally, and they seem to have a lot of respect and love for him. In fact, one of the brothers, Abu Yahya Yusuf Price, a brother who I've known for, if not 20 years, just about 20 years, he sent me a paper referring to Spubs having cult characteristics. And I immediately told the brother Yusuf, I disagree with that characterization of them. And I told him that exact same reason. I don't know a cult that existed in America except that the people fell into shirk al-ta'ah as it relates to the cult leaders. So I don't necessarily agree with that characterization. I told this brother that years ago. Now it's morphed into cult characteristics to the cult. Nobody's saying they have cult characteristics anymore. Now they're just straight up saying the cult. The cult. This is a going beyond bounds. This is why these matters, people shouldn't be, who haven't really studied anything, shouldn't even be dealing with these matters. Let the students that see the problems deal with these matters. Because when the students who are aware of the problems deal with these matters, they're dealing with these matters based off knowledge. They're not dealing with these matters based off emotions and talking out of the side of their necks and making matters worse, going beyond bounds. What people are consequently doing is people need to fear that you could be giving these brothers your deeds. This is a reality. This is a reality. So I agree with the brother and his premise when he made that statement. I just wanted to expound on that particular point so that could be understood. But there were some points that the brother made concerning S-Pubs that it's important to emphasize. And one of the points that he made is that we want good for them. And this is something that the people of Sunnah who are really traversing upon the Sunnah want for whoever is in opposition to the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. We genuinely want good for them. If we have to refute somebody, it's not for the purpose of destroying them, it's for the purpose of helping them. That's why you don't find these blameworthy type of insults within the refutations. Because it's for the purpose of guiding them and hoping that they leave off their mistakes and come back to the truth. And this is in accordance with the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the hadith of Anas ibn Malik, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated, "Lam yu'minu ahadakum la yu'minu ahadakum hatta yuhibba لأخيه ما يحب حتى يحب أو حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. The Prophet ﷺ, he stated, none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother that which he loves for himself. That which he loves for himself. Now, I don't know, I can't speak for other people, but I would love to be brought close to the mercy of Allah. I would love to receive Allah's forgiveness. I would love to be entered into Allah's paradise by Allah's mercy. I would love to be made distant from the hellfire. I would love for my shortcomings to be wiped away, wiped out of my book. I would love to receive the refuge and shelter of Allah's pleasure from his anger, of Allah's love from his hate, and thus forth and so on. So if I want this for myself, then it is from Iman that I want that for my brothers, no matter who they may be. No matter if it's S-Pubs or the Sufi on the other side of town or the Ashari calling to whatever it is that he may be calling to. We want good for our brothers. So when people come with these types of attacks, then it leaves people to honestly question their motives. It leads people to question their motives. And this is why the brother was stating, I believe this is why the brother was stating, that you guys are now gathering characteristics of a hizb yourself. You're claiming to fight the characteristics of a hizb, and you guys are now adopting characteristics of a hizb. Picture that. Why? Because your insults and your attacks are fueled based off hate. It's not based off, it doesn't appear to be based on clarifying what Allah loves and is pleased with. On a dhahir, it doesn't appear to be that way. And I'm saying it like that because I can't speak exactly for the hearts of men. But the actions, we can criticize the actions all day. We can criticize the actions all day. So the point and the purpose should be for these brothers' rectification. That's what the point and the purpose for the criticism should be. And when people are sitting around insulting, coming with dumbfounded accusations and drawing the most outlandish conclusions, then this doesn't illustrate a person who really wants good. This is a person that's really coming with tote the line that I'm establishing, or else we're going to deal with you like this. And that's just like they do. That's just what they do. Regardless if you try and project out on other people and say, we're like them. That's what they do. You've never seen Al Anjelesi do that with anybody. And I highly doubt you've ever seen Khalid Green do that with anybody. Period. Another thing that the brother brought up, which was true and I agree with, is that he said that Salafi publications are closer to us, and he named a whole lot of deviant groups, the Asha'ira, the Maturidiyya, the Mu'tazila, the Khawarij, Boko Haram, and. Is that statement from Khalid Green correct or not? That statement is 100% correct. They are closer to us than these deviant groups. You think the Shiite are closer to us than S-Pubs? You think the Sufis are closer to us than S-Pubs? Do you think the Asha'ira or the Ikhwan al-Muslimin are closer to us than S-Pubs? La. S-Pubs are actually closer to us than these guys. So that was the truth what he spoke. But I want to expound on a point, and this is, for me, a teachable moment. Hopefully it's a teachable moment. That if we were to compare Salafiyya with Haddadia and where S-Pub stands concerning those two examples, then honestly, I would say that S-Pubs are more closer to the Haddadis than they are the Salafis. I would say that they are more closer to the Haddadis than they are the Salafis. Not saying that they are Haddadis. What I'm saying is they are closer to the Haddadis than the Salafis. And this is a point that I've already pointed out in several. We did a talk, me and Abu Yusuf Khalifa. The audios are available. We did a talk repelling false principles attributed to Salafiyah, and some of those qualities that they have with them were being represented in there. They were being represented point by point. So this isn't a discussion that hasn't been had already. And from a standpoint of fairness, I want to point that out right now, just some points. And I don't plan on having this video be extremely long. I see 40 minutes has already passed from this live stream. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but what I want to do is I want to read from this particular book, Al-Adilla wal-Barahin al-Wadihat fi Bayan Inhiraf Arafat. It is clear proofs and evidence as it pertains to the clarification concerning the deviations of Arafat, Yani Arafat al-Muhammadi, someone that S-Pubs has sided with recently in this fitna that is referred to as the Sa'afiqah. And there's a chapter in this book where the author is showing how Arafat, although he may have criticized Fali al-Harbi and Yahya al-Hajuri for the Haddadi-like traits that they had with them, he himself is falling into these same things. And when I read this, I couldn't help but recognize the similarities between in these characteristics and the actions of S-Pubs. For those who are unaware of the Haddadiyun, of the Haddadi, then they originally, the name comes from a man named Mahmud al-Haddad, and he was thought to be Salafi for many years until he started to express ghulu as it relates to affairs of tabdiya. Scholars of Ahlul Sunnah would make mistakes, and he would deal with them in a manner that was not befitting to deal with the mistakes, as it relates to dealing with the mistakes of Ahlul Sunnah. So much so that certain scholars of the Sunnah's books he would order to be burned as it relates to their mistakes, on account of their mistakes. This Haddadia has had one wave after the other. The first wave being surrounded around the ghulu of Mahmud Haddad. The second wave was surrounding the ghulu of Fali al-Harbi, and all of it was directly connected to Tabdi' and Tahdhir and al-Jarh wa Ta'adil. All of it was connected to these matters. Then that third wave was the wave that we found with Yahya al-Hajuri. So, in illustrating that the fact that S-Pubs are closer to Haddadiyya than they are to Salafiyya, or the Haddadiyun than they are the Salafiyun, I'm going to read from this just to illustrate that. And anybody that is aware of S-Pubs and what they've been doing, when you hear these points, you'll be amazed just like I was when I read it. And Allah knows best. The first, and I'm just going to translate, defamation as it pertains to the scholars and disrespect of them and dropping them. And especially as Sheikh Rabi and the ulama of Medina. Now, this is the author is quoting Arafat al-Muhammadi when he's speaking about al-Hajuri and Fali al-Harbi. That's why he uses Sheikh Rabi at the end as an example. However, if we were to drop that name, Sheikh Rabi, for a second, and throw about 30 to 40 to 50 scholars other than Sheikh Rabi's name on there, and leave the rest the same, that's Salafi publications to a T. Defamation as it pertains to the ulama, disrespect of them, and try and an attempt to drop and or topple them, especially as Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi and Sheikh Wasi al Abbas and all of the Kuwaiti Mashaykh and Sheikh Ahmed Bezmoud and we could just keep naming names. We can just keep naming names. That's the first. That's the first thing, that how they resemble Fali al-Harbi and Yahya al-Hajuri in that regard. Two individuals that were different waves of Haddadia at different times. The second thing that's mentioned, عدم النظر إلى المصالح والمفاسد. The lack of examining the benefits and the harms, or the pros and the cons. So these two didn't pay attention to what was beneficial as it relates to dawah, what would be a benefit for dawah. On the contrary, the both of them examined the benefits to themselves. They made moves that actually benefited themselves. Now, for anybody that's, especially the brothers in Philly, the S-Pub affiliates that are in Philly, the brothers in Philly would be able to recognize and actually tell you things that those people there have done that wasn't in the best interest of the Salafi Dawah and a benefit for the Salafi Dawah, but it was a benefit that was directly for them. They made moves against callers, against people trying to do good for the Dawah in general, who told you you can translate that book. Did you get the Sheikh's permission? And they're translating a bunch of books and they don't have none of the Sheikh's permission. Who told you you could do that? This? Who told you you could do that? Oh, you coming back in our city to give Dawah? You need to check in. So you could tell that there were moves that were made that were in the best interest of themselves and not in the best interest of Dawah. And I know brothers in Philly, for whoever hears this, they know exactly what I'm talking about. They know exactly what I'm talking about. Another characteristic that they have that is right along aligned with the characteristics of the Haddadi is that for the listener, or they make the listener, from whoever listens to them, they made these listeners perceive that they were the ones that had true and genuine jealousy for the Dawah, and that the Dawah, yani is safeguarding and like this, was their direct responsibility in contradiction to others. In contradiction to others. And if you want to understand, okay, how are they doing this or how are they doing that, all you have to do is look at their reactions whenever they're legitimately criticized, how they react. So-and-so is attacking the Salafis. They become the Salafis. So-and-so is attacking the Salafis. Although it could be a Salafi that's criticizing them for something legitimate. So-and-so attacks the Salafis, as if the person who criticized them is excluded from the fold of Salafiyya. I mean, we have people that are beneficial. There was a sister, Mujahid Khadija bint Lasina. This sister authored works. She was studied in Yemen. Of course, I don't know her personally, but I've heard about her. You know, I heard about her when I was in Yemen from how she benefited. At any rate, I get a call from a brother who's locked in a penitentiary. He gave me, the brother somehow got my number, gave me a call. He's in the penitentiary somewhere. He's asking me, can we read the books of this sister? Of course, I tell him, yeah, from my knowledge, the sister's a Salafi sister, and she studied overseas and she benefited. He responds that one of the people out of that Philly crew amongst the S Pub affiliates, said that it wasn't permissible to take from her books because she criticizes one of the noble brothers involved in dawah. And the brother who she criticizes wasn't mentioned, and her criticism against this so called noble brother likewise wasn't mentioned. I told that brother that statement should be rejected. That statement, it should be rejected. Ignore that statement. And this is before all this issue, this whole issue with Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi. This was before that. This is before that. So the point that I'm making is they see themselves as the people that have real jealousy for the deen, so much so when you see it when they're criticized for something. He attacks he attacks the noble brothers, he attacks the Salafis, and thus forth and so on. So these are some of the points that were being brought up about the aforementioned individual, that as pubs, they have these traits. These are all traits that the Haddadi has with him, and they have these exact same traits. Now I was about to forget to read one more, and this is a clear-cut trait that nobody would dispute. This last trait I'm going to quote, that they hide behind some of the ulama. So Farley and his group, they hid behind, by way of plotting and scheming, they hid behind some of the ulama in the Najd. And Al-Hajuri, he hid behind, by way of his speech, I have been appointed by Sheikh Mukbil, and I am upon the tariq of Sheikh Mukbil. So he concealed himself behind statements of that nature, basically behind Sheikh Mukbil. Now, anybody that knows anything about S-pubs knows that that's exactly what they do. They're hiding behind Sheikh Rabi, Sheikh Ubaid, and at this point, Sheikh Abdullah al-Bukhari. If they criticize someone, and I've seen them do this when the fitna of the South Africa first jumped off. One of them in Birmingham was literally hiding behind a statement of Sheikh Rabi, spreading a statement of Sheikh Rabi that was clearly incorrect. And then when people called him on it directly, he said, "Why are you talking about me? You really have a problem with Sheikh Rabi. Sheikh Rabi said that." But you're conveying it. You're conveying it to multitudes of people as if it is in accordance with the truth here. You're claiming to be a caller and someone who has knowledge, even though the person who was making the statement is literally a never student. He's unknown as it relates to the circles of knowledge. But the point that I'm making is you're conveying it, and if you see yourself to be some type of person of knowledge, then you yourself wouldn't co-sign something that is incorrect. That's incorrect. And so quite naturally, people will blame you for spreading something that is clearly incorrect. You can't come back now and try and say, "Why are you talking about me? Sheikh Rabi said that your issues with Sheikh Rabi." No, the person who was criticizing you, his issues with you. You're spreading that incorrect statement throughout the West. His issue is with you. And so that's the point that I'm making. This is how the tactic of how they hide behind scholars. Every time you see them be legitimately criticized, what did you see them do? Start throwing out the recommendations of Sheikh Rabi and Sheikh Ubay for them all over the internet. These are examples of them hiding behind these mashayikh. Hiding behind these mashayikh. So anyway, I don't want to go. I could keep going, and I just wanted to mention what I mentioned, expound on some of the things that the brother mentioned in his talk. Like I said, I think it was an excellent talk. his response to this SP leaks, and whoever they are, whoever else is with him besides the two names that was brought to my attention. And, I ask Allah Ta'ala to rectify the affairs of the Salafis here in the West and bring about some type of closure to all this madness that's taking place amongst us. But it's going to have to come with certain people recognizing that they have straight up wronged people for years. They've wronged people. They've applied double standards as it relates to themselves and other people. Could you imagine if Abu Yusuf Khalifa, for instance, said that removing air fresheners from your vehicle is from Tawheed, and whatever else was said surrounding that issue? Could you imagine what that Germantown crew or anybody that's connected with them would have been saying about him all over the internet? Could you imagine? And that's the point where I say there's a lot of wrongs that have been done. There's a lot of double standards. There's a lot of lying. There's a lot of, blameworthy actions that have been applied on the parts of these individuals. And we ask Allah Ta'ala to free us from this type of mischief making that we see occurring within our ranks. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.